Welcome to another episode of Into the Wind. So we've already discussed how to get our quick drop numbers. We used our unballistic software to get that information. Now, next we need to figure out how to read and call for the wind. That just takes a little bit of experience. Really need to get some type of wind meter, a Kestrel, and then get out into the wind. And I recommend really doing this as much as possible. You don't even have to be on the range to do this. Just go out in front of the house before you go get groceries, whatever it is. Go out, face into the wind, make a good estimate. Hold your Kestrel up for about 30-45 seconds and see how close you are. And then start tuning and training yourself on how to estimate the wind. So once that is done, again, we're going to need to use our ballistic software, but it's going to have to be trued. That's the most important thing with this information. If it's not trued with the wind aspect of it, it's probably still going to be close enough that we're going to get effective, accurate first round hits on target, but this is what we're going to be looking for. We're going to go into our ballistic software, and I would recommend starting off with like a 3 mile an hour, a full value wind. So from 3 or 9 o'clock, once you get into your ballistic information, you need to make sure that you turn off any kind of earth-based effects. So turn off your aerodynamic jump, turn off your Coriolis, your spin drift, all that needs to be turned off. That way the only thing that there is going to be our wind call. So what we're going to do is you can start off with 3 miles an hour. You can either do it from 3 or 9 o'clock. That's going to be our full value wind. And what we're looking for is you're going to go 3 miles an hour, 4 miles an hour, 5, 6, 7. You're going to just work your way up until you get to where 1/100th of your distance equals your dope and mils. So meaning with a 3 mile an hour wind, if you have a 3 mile an hour gun, if you type in, let's say 400 yards, then you should be getting with a 3 mile an hour wind 0.4. So what we're looking for is we're going to continue to go up. So I recommend starting somewhere in the middle. 400 yards, put in 3 miles an hour, and then put in 4 miles, and then 5 miles, and then 6 miles. And you should get to where 300 yards equals 0.3 mils, 400 yards equals 0.4 mils, 500 equals 0.5. And then whatever number that is, that's the mile per hour that your gun is. So then you would refer to your gun, like my 308 is a 4 mile per hour gun. My 6.5 Creedmoor is a 6 mile per hour gun. Now, when you're doing this, you're going to get to a certain distance and you're going to realize it doesn't quite match up anymore. An example of this is my 308 from 100 to 500 yards. So even though I'm considering it a 4 mile an hour gun, at 0 to 500 yards, it lines up a whole lot better as a 5 mile an hour gun. From 500 out to about 800 yards, it's going to line up as a 4 mile an hour gun. From 8, 9, 10, 11, it starts getting off. So I just have to memorize at those distances, I need to add 1/10 of a mil to whatever my my wind call is. So let's say at 900 yards, all right, it's not going to be 0.9, it's actually going to be 10 or 1 full mil. So it's just something you need to be aware of. It works the exact same way on my 6.5 Creedmoor. So from 0 to 500 yards, I'm actually going to use a 7 mile per hour gun. And then from 500 on, I'm going to drop it down to 6 mile an hour. And then out with my 6.5, I have a higher BC bullet. Out to, I think, 900, 1,000 yards is where it starts to have that change again. However, to make everything as simple as possible, I consider my 308 really at any distance up to roughly 800 yards, a 4 mile an hour gun. Now, when I do the math and I get real detailed into the math, The reason it works this way is because it's closer to about 4.6 miles an hour. My 6.5 Creedmoor is 6.5 miles an hour. And I remember that because it's 6.5 miles an hour for a 6.5 Creedmoor. That's just happened how it works. On my 6.5, I'm using 147 grain ELD match, so it has that higher BC. With the 308, I am actually in the process of changing bullets on that one, going with a little bit higher BC. So I was going from 175 grain Sierra Match King. I'm now going to 178 grain ELD. So it has a little bit higher BC. So it is gonna probably jump up to from that 4 mile an hour to a 5 mile an hour. I'll run the ballistics on that and get that figured out. So now that you kind of have an understanding of that, what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to our ballistic software. We're going to take a look about exactly how that looks onto our ballistic software. This is Streetlock Pro. You can see here I've got my Tikka 6.5 Creedmoor. Should be a 6.5 or a 6 mile per hour gun. I'm using 147 grain ELD. So remember, we need to make sure that we have our spindrift, our Coriolis. We need to have all this stuff off of there. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, let's say 400 yards. And then we're going to make this, we got 90-degree wind, so that's full value. We're going to say 4 mile per hour. And then, so 0.3, so that doesn't work. So we're going to go up to 5 miles an hour. 0.3, that doesn't work. Let's go to 6 miles an hour. And 0.4. Now that we're on par, let's go to 200 yards. And it should be 0.2, which it is. Now we've already done 400, so we're going to go to 500 yards. And we should have 0.5, which we do. Down here, 0.5. We're going to go to 600 yards. We're going to see how far out this works per our calculator. So there's 0.6. Now we're going to go to 700 yards. Now remember, this is a very high BC bullet. So this is going to work out much more effective at a longer distance. So 700 yards, let's go to 800. And we got 0.9. So now we know at 800 yards it does change a little bit. So I would consider this to be effective all the way out to 800 yards. Now, if I'm shooting 800 yards, and I'm off on my wind call by 0.1, right? So if I dial, let's say 0.8 mils, and I end up hitting 0.9, I'm going to be happy with that result. So let's see how much further this can go, knowing that we have a tenth of a mil air. So we got 900 yards. Now if this stays, I should have 9, right? But we're going to be 1/10 of a mil above that 0.1, and we are. So I know I have to add 0.1 mil at 800 yards. So let's go to 1,000. And now we're much further off. So the other thing we can do, let's go back down to 900 yards. So we know we can use 6 miles an hour all the way out to 800 yards. What if we switch it at 800 yards to 5 miles an hour? Let's see if we're back on track. Nope, so we're actually a little bit low. So let's go 1,000 and see if it comes back on. So 1,000 we're back on at 5 miles an hour. Let's do 1,100. And we're back on. Let's see what 1,200 looks like. We're at 12. We're going to go to 13. And we're off again. So remember, this does round, so we're probably going to be good using 6 miles an hour at 800 yards and then dropping to 5 miles an hour at 900 yards because we do have that little bit of rounding error. So let's see what that 5 look like again. So yeah, we're off a little bit. So anyway, this is just an example of how this works. Now let's look at one more example. We're going to go ahead and change our rifle. I'm going to go to my 308. 175 grain Sierra Match King. We're going to do the exact same thing. Let's go to 400 yards. Now this is a 4-mile-an-hour gun. So we're going to go to 4 miles an hour. Now 400 yards, I should have 0.4. But remember I said this gun is actually like a 4.5-mile-an-hour gun. So it should be 0.5. And then that lines up. Let's see how far out this works. So we're going to let's do 200 yards. I should be 0.2 if this lines up correctly. And it does. So let's go to 500. And we're at 0.6. Now let's drop this back down to 4, and that should line us back up. And it does. So let's go 5. We got 600. We're at 0.4, so now it's off just a little bit. Let's go to 700. We're at 7. Oh, I think I forgot to hit the button. Let's go back to 600. Forgot to calculate. Okay, so it is off just a little bit there, and that's where that half-mile value comes into play. So 700. We're back on 7. Let's see what 800 looks like. We're at 0.8 and 900. I think it should start dropping off again. Nope, 0.9. Okay, well, let's go to 1,000. And now we're getting off again. So this is where at closer distances, right? So if we have a 4-mile-per-hour gun and we're shooting 4 miles an hour, our relationship between, because we're using angular measurements, if I'm 0.1 or a tenth of a mil off at 400 yards, it's going to be a smaller error than being 0.1 off at, let's say, 600 yards. So that's why I would go ahead and just say stick with 4 miles an hour across the entire spectrum of this rifle. Okay, so now that we've actually taken a look at our ballistic software, that should make this make a little bit more sense. So with the 308, when we went to 4 miles an hour, until we got to 500 yards, it didn't exactly line up. But again, we have at 100 yards, a tenth of a mil is only that's the wrong marker, is only 0.36 of error. So if we want to go ahead and call it a 5 mile an hour, I'll do that. But if I'm shooting, 400 or 500 yards and I'm only off an inch, I would consider that very successful. Now, if I want more accuracy, I'll go ahead and bump that up to 5. But at 5 and 600 yards, being 1 inch off, I'm probably actually going to have a little bit larger error in my wind call. Can I tell the difference between a 4 and 5 mile an hour wind? I can tell you this, is I'm very good at reading wind, but I don't think I'm within 1 mile an hour yet. Typically, I would say I'm within 3 miles an hour. When I'm reading the wind, I can feel it, and I say, okay, that's about 4 to 5. Or 5 to 6, or I'm usually within, I would say, 2 miles an hour, at least on my high side and my low side. So if I'm calling a 5 mile an hour wind, it could be 6 or it could be 7. So I'm going to have a greater error there than I am going to be with this. So I'm not too concerned with that little bit of error in this system. You also have to remember that this is a system, it does naturally have a little bit of an error built into it, right? So with our quick drop has, if we just use our number, so like with 308, our quick drop number for 308 is 1.8. So it does have a little bit of an error built into it, and that's why I talked about going to that bracketing. Once we go to that bracketing, that does take that error almost completely out, other than the error that's in our scope. Meaning, so if we need to dial, let's say at 500 yards, we're going to dial 2, with my 308, I'm going to dial 3.2 mils, but I might only need to dial 3.15, but I can't dial that 0.5. We got to round that up. So we do have that little bit of error that's naturally in that system. So with bracketing that quick drop number, that gets us within the error, the maximum potential that we have within our system. This is kind of the same thing, is that this is going to get us within the maximum potential of this system, of what you can call for that wind. We also we can't really dial for that half a mile an hour wind because we can only dial 0.1 or 0.2. We can't dial 0.25, at least with using mils. So this is going to get us extremely close. The other thing is if your Kestrel, the batteries go out, if anything happens to your equipment, you can make hits. You can call your wind and you can have your drop all the way really out to, depending on the caliber, 7, 8, 900 yards. I don't know of any position that really any civilian is going to be in that where that's not going to be good enough. That is going to be, I mean, the really, even with your ballistic calculator, that you're going to get the same answer. Every time I do this when I'm out on the range, most of the time, I'll go ahead and take a couple shots from, 3 to 700 yards using this and just to keep that skill set up. And then I'll go back and I'll start using my ballistic calculator to make sure everything lines up. So this is very effective. So the next step is that we need to do is, this is for a full value wind. Now, what happens if our wind is coming in at an angle, right? So let's say it's coming in at 1230. Let's say it's coming in at 230. Now, what do?